Welcome to our workshop on AI-powered communication strategies for healthcare innovators. Thanks for joining us. I'm Colleen Wisniewski, and I'm the marketing director at Matter. A little bit about Matter. We are the premier health tech incubator and corporate innovation hub, and we're on a mission to accelerate the pace of change of healthcare. We believe that we believe that this mission is best accomplished through collaboration, and that's exactly what this workshop is today. It's a collaboration between Matter and our longtime media partner, Public Communications, Inc., who we are so happy to have here today. I'd like to introduce Mary Aaron J. and Jared Allreed from Public Communications, Inc., who will tell you a little bit more about themselves and get the session started. Mary, Jared, welcome, and thanks for your time today.
Thank you, Colleen. And thank you all for showing up today. You know, we realize you're using what is probably your lunch hour to get a little bit of insight on something that I think probably everybody recognizes really a transformative force in today's world. And we're excited to talk about this content because it's something that is keeping us on our toes, and we are learning every day. A little snapshot about us. We are a 5-year partner now. We're going into our 6th year of partnering with Matter, and very pleased to do so. We are a public relations and digital marketing firm, and we've been around for 60 years, and any organization that's been around for 6 decades knows that you have to embrace change. And I'm guessing that all of you here today, you clearly understand that too, or you wouldn't be here. AI is what is powering tremendous change. Our agency recognized about 18 months ago that this was going to be so transformative that it was critical that we understand it for ourselves and for our clients and for the sectors that our clients work in, a significant one of which is healthcare, which is a specialty area for Public Communications, Inc. So we put together a task force, and that task force is charged with not only staying on top of trends and keeping our whole staff informed and educated and trained, but also developing policies and guidelines to make sure that our agency is staying on the right side of how this is all developing. I will let Jared, when he starts to speak, he'll give you a kind of a sense of who he is. You'll be hearing a lot from him because he's our resident expert. There are a lot of different levels of experience represented here today, which you'll see here. We were very pleased that we had a chance to get some of that registration information, and you're in good company. No matter what your level of experience is, you're in good company, because you can see that nearly or more than 3/4 of the people who had registered for this session had only beginning level or even just starting to dip a toe in the water in terms of playing with, experimenting with generative AI. But we do have, in addition, about 1/4 who had more advanced experience. So no matter how you come to the session, whether you are still just testing it out or you really have more day-to-day use with it already, there are some things that we think all of us can benefit from. And that's our intent, is to kind of set that playing field and share some insights from what we see specifically around a communications perspective. I do also want to call out that we took a look too at the diversity of the registrants among type of organizations that you represent. And it is a widespread field. So no surprise at all, the vast majority of the registrants, all of you, either represent a startup company, which is great. We're great that Matter brings you together. And then, our healthcare, hospitals and health systems. Those are the biggest groups represented here, but that's not it, because there are also universities represented, pharma, payers, consultants, and investors, including some students in the group. So we've got a widespread group, and we have deliberately framed the content today to try to address all of that, so that there's something for everybody. So here's what we plan to cover today. We've got a range of things that kind of set the stage for you. We'll lead off with those. There are some things that we think we want to make sure everybody is referencing kind of the same starting point here, but then getting to the good stuff, the stuff we're sure you're here for. What are those tools? How can they be used specifically for multi-channel content? And what are some of the pitfalls you need to be concerned about avoiding? That's really critical, especially in healthcare. And the really, really, really fun stuff that Jared will get to address and share with you. What do you need to be thinking about in terms of doing really effective prompt engineering and what's ahead? I want to also emphasize that we are using a very specific perspective here. We are not talking about how AI is transforming healthcare as a field. That is a massive field and a massive set of content that we could cover. We are very narrowly focused today on how AI is transforming communications about healthcare and how you can use it to power what you're doing on behalf of your organization. So tools, uses, pitfalls, and those engineering tips. That's what we're going to give you. And our hope is that every one of you, regardless of experience level, industry, company, will come away from today's session having at least one new idea, one new insight, or one piece of inspiration that you're going to walk away with and go try out. And we will have plenty of time for Q&A. So let's get started. I do want to set the stage with just a couple of other things for context. Everyone agrees that AI is changing the world dramatically, right? I don't think anyone would dispute that. But I think it's instructive to really get a sense of how dramatic that change is and has been and will continue to be. A few key facts. 2 years, 5 days, and 2 months. Just 2 years ago, November of 2022, is when OpenAI launched ChatGPT. 2 years ago. In the first 5 days of that company's launch, there were already 1 million users. And in the first 2 months of the ChatGPT tool being live, they had already achieved 100 million users. That is exponentially higher than other platforms and the length of time they took to achieve 100 million users. TikTok was 9 months. Instagram took 2.5 years. So this is a technology that is truly a wave that is generating tremendous change and sweeping industries and business practices all across the globe. So we knew that we needed to ride that wave. We needed to jump on it and be able to master it and be able to put it into practice for our clients and have our own staff understand what the guardrails would be for our use of it on clients' behalf. What kind of benefits can you expect to get from AI? Why are you here? We're guessing that these are the 3 biggest things in terms of benefiting communications that we see, and that these 3 are probably among the top drivers of the reason you chose to spend some time here today. Of course, speed and efficiency in content creation. That is the number one, absolute number one. Message tailoring and audience targeting. But it also does allow enhanced trend and data analysis. And you'll see some of that in the sections when Jared goes into more in-depth look at uses. But I do again want to be clear. This isn't intended as a list of the benefits of AI overall. If you look at the big picture trends of AI in healthcare as a field, there are some really phenomenal changes, understanding that there are risks to these as well, but the enhancements of diagnosis and treatment and operations, the ways that it is reshaping patient engagement and communications, and then ethical, regulatory, and trust challenges are really key, particularly for those of you who are here from hospitals and health systems. We see this every day. You cannot turn on the news now without seeing some reference to AI. I want to also share, I think it's important to understand how it is that artificial intelligence makes possible all of these benefits. Sam Altman of OpenAI described how it works in a way that really was a light bulb moment for me. He wrote an article in September called The Intelligence Age, and he said, deep learning works. That's the thumbnail 3 words, but here's how. He says, humanity discovered an algorithm that could really and truly learn any distribution of data or really understand the underlying rules or patterns that produce a distribution of data. So when you think about AI in communications, think about the fact that that algorithm is recognizing this distribution of language. So now let's talk about how. How are people using it? This survey is an important one. Muck Rack is a source that we as communication professionals use every day. Many of you on this webinar may use it and be familiar with it. There was a survey done at the beginning of, well, actually it was conducted at the very end of 2023, but it was shared at the beginning of this year. And no surprise, you've got writing social copy and writing press releases and crafting pitches. Those are among the top 4 uses. There are some other things that came out of this survey that I think are instructive. There is an incredible rapid increase in AI adoption among communication professionals. There were, it grew from 28% in March 2023, more than doubling to 64% of PR pros and communication pros by November of 2023. I do want to flag, though, that there were some concerns that this survey uncovered. Discrepancy in disclosure of AI use was one, and lack of AI policies and training. So keep those things in mind, because there are some specific steps that we recommend taking to mitigate some of those. But first, I want to turn it over to Jared to dive into some of the key things that you really want to hear about, those tools and the uses.
Thank you, Mary. And hello, everybody. Great to be here. And to introduce myself, my name is Jared Allreed, and I lead our AI task force at PCI. And so we're going to dive into some background about what you really need to know about AI. And to kick that off, we're going to start with a quick glossary of terms. And so here, just so that we're all on the same page, want to start with generative AI. This is a specific form of AI. AI in general is all-encompassing of a lot of different things, but really what we're focusing on is generative AI. And what that is things like ChatGPT that have risen to popularity over the past 2 years. And when working with these generative AI models, these large language models is what they're called, LLMs for short. We give them inputs, and that's the prompts that we use, and we'll talk about some prompt engineering later on. And these models give us outputs, and that's what it gives us back. So really just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, regardless of kind of our familiarity with generative AI so far. But here are kind of those key terms. So some of you may have heard of a study done by the Boston Consulting Group last year that really demonstrated the efficiencies of using AI in a business world. And while there's a lot of text on here, really what I want to draw your eye to is that 2 groups given the same task focused on creative product innovation. One group had ChatGPT as an assistant and one did not. The group with ChatGPT outperformed the group without by 40%. So a clear demonstration of efficiency within using ChatGPT. There are certainly some other things to consider when looking at this study. If you look at using ChatGPT for business problem solving, ChatGPT actually resulted in performance that was 23% lower than those not using ChatGPT. So while it thrives right now in creative product innovation, business strategy wasn't one of its strengths. And something to note on this is this study is over a year old now, and AI is continuing to advance. So there certainly could be differences as new models have come to light. But I think one of the most important takeaways is at the end of this slide here is human AI collaboration is really when it becomes the most effective in a business scenario. So when people combined with AI work together to solve problems, that's when you're getting your best results. If you're here and hoping that AI will just be able to do your job for you, it's probably not going to be exactly what you're looking for. But right now, it is a wonderful assist to find those efficiencies and really be able to access data and information that we weren't able to before. So this is a great example of really demonstrating that ChatGPT can drive efficiencies, but only in some areas when used effectively. So looking over all of these business use cases on this slide, there's lots of different ways that AI can be implemented. And while we're going to focus on communication-specific strategies throughout this webinar, there are others that apply to all industries, such as note-taking and action items from emails, or looking through PDFs and analyzing large sets of data. These kind of work across all industries, but are great ways to really test the waters of AI. You may have seen, if you have updated your iPhone recently, Apple Intelligence, and that is summarizing all of your notifications and emails on your phone. That's something that AI excels at, is summary when given information, and ways that we're seeing it really be utilized to have more and more efficiency in the business world in general, not just within communications. So lots of these are going to be utilized across all industries, but great ways to kind of dip your toes into the water. And so now we're going to look at some of the tools for the job. So we're talking about some of the use cases, and we'll get into more communications ones, but what are we using in order to interact with these large language models? So this is not an exhaustive list that we are going to go through, but this is a list of the ones that we have seen emerge at the top of the field and ones that we use at PCI for our communications. ChatGPT is the platform that we use at PCI. So the examples that you'll see later on in this presentation, those are all coming directly from ChatGPT. ChatGPT, Claude, made by Anthropic, and Google Gemini, made by Google. All of these are large language models. They function quite similarly. They differentiate in their interface, so how you use them, and in the data that they're trained on. So important to note that they all are able to produce similar results when given similar prompts. But for our work, we found that ChatGPT is advanced at writing and is a leading model in the things that we're working on most. For example, Claude is great at coding, but since that doesn't really impact what we're doing day to day, we have stuck with ChatGPT, but we continue to monitor all of the other options as they do continue to develop. Some other tools, Perplexity, this is another one that's powered by some of those large language models from the slide before, but this one we'll talk a little bit more about later, but it cites its sources from internet sources. This is a great one for research that we have utilized and recommend checking out. And then Microsoft Copilot is a AI tool that you may have heard about. There's lots of advertising right now, but this integrates within all of your Microsoft Office products. It's very good at helping drive efficiencies like action items from meetings on Teams and helping summarize emails, but it's not as good as content generation. And really, for us, we found more success with ChatGPT over models like this that are focused more on the efficiency, like some of those business use cases we talked about. A couple other tools that are a little bit more tailored in the tasks that they are good at. Jasper AI, this is a communications platform focused on marketing where you're able to upload background information about your company and develop a company voice that it will then produce content in that voice. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the options like just ChatGPT, but it requires less prompting and less interaction and has more of that knowledge base, so it uses your data as references. A good one if you're working with teams or if you really are on the newer side of AI and want to have a platform that kind of coaches you through a little bit more how to get the results that you're looking for. Gamma, this is what we've found to be one of the best presentation generators on the market right now. This is a category that's growing rapidly. It's still a little bit behind some of the others, but what we've seen is it's a great starting point for presentations. It helps with design, formatting, really choosing what to put on each slide. It's usually not producing a final product presentation, but it has saved a lot of time in that initial formatting and working through some of the presentation creations that take a little bit longer, such as the creative side. So we've used that one to help kind of save some time and really get those first drafts done. And so now we're going to talk a little bit about how we use AI at PCI. So those were some of the tools we use, but what are we doing with those tools and how are we able to really leverage this to boost our communication strategies? So in this slide, we have some practical uses. These are uses that we have done before and do regularly and really find that AI is able to drive a lot of efficiencies. And I'm going to pause actually, and we're going to throw up a poll and see where you in the audience find yourself, if you've experimented with it before, where you've been using this. Awesome. We will keep moving on. So next, looking at some of those places that we utilize AI. This is great. Thank you for showing up the results of the poll, but it looks like research and idea generation is the #1 use among our audience. Content drafts, great, and content edits and revisions. So that's awesome. Those are some of the things that we're going to talk through. And perfect timing, we are on research right now. So these are the two tools that we have used for AI research. ChatGPT is a good starting point for all different things, but really important to note that ChatGPT can struggle with hallucinations. And hallucinations are what they call it in the AI industry, but for the most part, it's just making stuff up without fact. And so you'll hear the term hallucinations, and really what that means is just making it up. And that is a bug in the system. It is not intended to be that way, and it is something that they are working on removing. But as it stands right now, it is important to check information from ChatGPT for accuracy. A nice example of this is if you go on ChatGPT and ask it to create a bio about yourself, in most cases, it will be quite wrong and include inaccurate information. And so a good way to kind of do a test for yourself and see what that comes up with. Perplexity, this is one that we use for research probably the most because it cites its sources. As you can see on the screenshot on the right side of the slide, it is giving me an answer to my question of what are GLP-1 agonists, and it's citing NIH and Mayo Clinic, but also Wikipedia. So I'm seeing exactly where it's getting the information that it's telling me, and I'm able to go verify that information very quickly. And that has been a great time saver in not having to re-Google everything that ChatGPT tells me. Something that just launched last week is a search function of ChatGPT. And what that does is it will now, if enabled, it'll perform pretty much like Perplexity, and it will cite its sources similar to how you see on this side of the screen. But right now we're monitoring to see how that performs. There's not much data on how large language models like ChatGPT are finding those results and what they look for. And right now we're kind of monitoring to see how that one performs. But it's notable that these large language models and generative AI developers are moving into the search landscape. I'm sure we've all seen the generative AI overviews that Google now produces at the top of the page, but seeing these other ones come in as competitors, it is a potential for a new way to search on the horizon as people, use social media and things like that. It's tending more and more towards AI. And the benefits that consumers are seeing right now are no ads and instant information. And certainly that can evolve and change. But something to be aware of is the way people find the information that you're putting out may be changing in the future. So another way that we use AI is to really find some efficiencies when looking through large reports. So here I uploaded a chapter of the AI Index report from Stanford University. This is an all-encompassing report about just about everything AI across the world. It's quite interesting if you do want to check it out. But here I uploaded a chapter about science and medicine advancements over the past year and asked for the main highlights. So you'll see in this call-out box and going forward, these call-out boxes at the top, the prompt just made a little bit larger so you can see what we used. And so I got these results and I said, I really want to focus more on the medical side of things. I don't really mind the scientific milestones. That's not what I'm looking for. And so I asked a follow-up question of please focus on just the medical side of things. And so this is an important note when working with models like OpenAI and or ChatGPT, asking those follow-up questions. It's not always going to do exactly what you want the first time. And this is something you'll hear me say throughout the presentation, but those second, third, fourth questions are going to get you much closer to where you want to be for this. And so here, I asked it to focus on just medical innovations, and you can see it gave me more information about those and more specific details that I was able to use. And again, this is just a small example of all of the things you can do with it when interacting with a PDF. You can ask it for everything just about a certain location or information only about this certain thing. And so it gives you a lot more freedom than just trying to search through a PDF and find mentions of a specific word. This one will give you summaries and just finding information quicker. Again, this is where we find the biggest benefit of AI is in time efficiencies, in those smaller things that we can make quicker by utilizing generative AI. So another way that we've utilized it is creating audience personas. Audience personas can help you tailor your messaging and really see if what you're sharing is relevant and resonating with your audience. Now, I will start with do not use generative AI to replace diverse perspectives, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But really, you can use it to help look at your audiences. So here we asked for audience personas for an infusion services company that works in specialty care and clinical nutrition. And on the screen, you can see one audience persona, but it generated 5 personas total with all of this different information. Other ones like a nutrition-focused patient persona or a healthcare provider persona. And these will allow you to see details about what those personas may look like. Now, these are general prompts. So if you know more about your audience, sharing that within your prompt will help you get much better results. So if you know that you're targeting a certain age group or demographic or people with certain interests or health conditions, adding those into the prompt will give you much better responses. But even with a general prompt like this, you can see just a snippet of all of that information that's included there and very helpful when creating those messages. So then I said, let's go with that first persona, and I asked ChatGPT to act as that persona, and then what would incentivize them to choose a specific company. And so in answering from the perspective of that persona, I'm able to basically ask questions of somebody in my audience. And so this is not perfect, but it is a great way to find information about those audiences and help continue to tailor your message to a specific audience and really find maybe the gaps in what you had prepared and questions that may arise that help you build out content that's even better and reaches more audience. Another way that you can utilize kind of those audience personas is maybe you're preparing for an investor presentation. I will say again, these prompts are quite general. The more detail you can include what the presentation is about, what your company is about, even any background on those investors, that's going to help you get more detailed results. But these are general examples of how you can utilize these to do more audience research, to do gap analysis. That's something that large language models like ChatGPT, they are very, very good at gap analysis. If you give them a news release or a blog post and you say, what are the gaps in my argument, or what are the gaps in what I'm saying, or what questions did I not answer? It's a great way to just get a gut check and make sure that your content is really going to resonate with your audience. So now I'm gonna show a quick video. This video is it's very simple prompts, and the point of this video is not for you to take these prompts and run with them. We'll go more into prompt engineering later. It's to show you in one ChatGPT thread how you can go from an outline of a blog to social media, a final blog and social media posts promoting that blog. So it's all done in 5 minutes of real time. It's sped up at 2 times speed, so it will be quick, but it'll just give you a little overview of how you can really streamline your content creation and get these first drafts of content out in very short time. Awesome. So I know that was super fast, but hopefully can give you an idea of just kind of a stream of content going from an outline of a blog to saying, yes, let's write the blog, but without that section, it looked a little long, into some headlines for the blog. It's great at ideation. So you could say, give me 10 headlines. You could say, give me 100 headlines, and continue to refine those and really work on finding the best ones and giving it more descriptors such as engaging or attention catching so that it is exactly what you're looking for. And then of course into writing a blog, and then into social media posts to promote the blog. And so again, emphasizing that that took 5 minutes of real time. It is of course not final drafts. The prompts were not very detailed, and you'll always want to refine and continually edit AI responses, but an example of the speed at which AI can create and which it can help you create. So we're going to go into a little bit more of the prompt engineering here in a minute, but first we really want to take a look at some of the things to be aware of when using these systems, because it's important to know both what they're good at and things to be aware of while using it. So I'm going to turn it over to Mary for that.
Thanks, Jared. And I can't think of a better way to illustrate what is wonderful about AI. But of course, there are these limitations and these pitfalls that we all need to be mindful of, especially in healthcare. I've been in a number of other sessions where experts have been talking about AI implementation in the actual healthcare processes and systems. And without fail, every single expert will underscore this is not AI run wild on its own. It is always about that collaboration between human intelligence and artificial intelligence. You need the human mind operating to ensure that really what's coming through is accurate information. The pitfalls require human intelligence to navigate. They also require policies, and policies that guide how you choose to use them. So we wanted to share with you the way that PCI addressed that, because I think it's instructive and might give you some guidance on the way you would want to think about it for your company. If you're a startup company and you're beginning to think about what kinds of policies do we need to put in place for our growing staff, or the ways that we are going to potentially even thinking about putting it into contracts. One of the first things to do is take a look at your company culture. What are the values that drive your organization? Because those values need to be closely aligned with and foundational to whatever your AI policies become. For PCI, we are a service business, and our whole business model is driven by our employees. So that had to be fundamental to any policy that we developed. Our employees' creativity and strategic thinking is our greatest asset, full stop. And then we had to think about, we work so much in fields that have real implications around public interests and public policy and ethical uses of communications. So we had to come up with the ways we wanted to think about the guidance to give our employees around that as well. Here's a piece of insight I would offer. Jared and I both participated in a workshop with Drake University and some of their leaders of artificial intelligence and journalism and mass communications. And what they've done is they've developed this 9-step process for adding AI into company and organizational workflows. The baseline for it is to start by assessing company values and culture, and then begin to look at kind of a cost benefit. You could add AI, for example, in this particular workflow of content generation. Now, is there a downside where you have to think about, we are diminishing our employees' sense of creativity and strategic input? All of those things have to be balanced. So our values led us to create guidelines for our staff. Every staff member has to read and understand them. And there is a fundamental concept that we built into ours, and that is disclosure. Transparency around use is very critical. It's going to come up again in just a minute here, but it is something that we have specifically directed our staff about how and when to disclose use of AI. We've gone so far as to have very specific language that we have developed to put into our contracts when we are working with new clients, so that there is full understanding of how we use AI. So we would urge all of you, as you're exploring how to embed AI in your practices, consider that as well. Accuracy, Jared already mentioned, these tools are prone to hallucinations. It is really critical that you double check and validate the sources that are provided and check them for yourself. Don't just presume that because that output came to you, it's accurate. I'll tell you that in addition to the hallucinations, sometimes it's just not timely information. Sometimes it's producing output that is citing sources that could be even 10 years old. I found that when I did that exercise that Jared talked about, and we really do urge you to try this. Ask AI to create a profile for yourself. For me, it came back with a source for some work that I had done something like 10 years prior. And so it was accurate, but it really wasn't timely. And so therefore it would be the kind of thing you'd have to make sure got left out. Your human intelligence is a critical component of your use of AI for your company, for a client, whatever it may be in a professional setting. So when those sources come up in the output you get, click through, validate them, check them for yourself. And never, we advocate, it is part of our policy, we do not use generative AI to create images, particularly images involving people. There have been cases where people have, it's been an AI generated human, but it looked like somebody real. And cases have hit, I don't know if they hit the courts, but they became points of contention, and organizations have run into some trouble in doing that. So be very cautious about how you use AI for imagery. Privacy. This is really, really fundamental to all of you. Working in healthcare, we all know about HIPAA and the importance of not revealing any personal health information. It is also true that you need to make sure that none of your proprietary information goes into these tools. And there's a slide coming up where we'll share with you one of the things that you can do to safeguard yourself and your proprietary information. But that issue about transparency is still really something to take seriously. And you'll see there that additional caution about copyright laws. Copyright is still going to be battled out for some time. I'm sure many of you have seen the New York Times was battling on this. These issues are not over. This will continue to unfold for a long time to come, which is exactly why we urge you all, have some policies, make sure they align with your company values. So that privacy setting, here's what we want you to know. I'm going to go through this quickly because you will have access to it in the deck, but those are the specific steps that you can take. I'll tell you that I keep that learn from or improve the model for everybody. I keep it toggled off all the time because I just don't want to take any risk of having information about a client put into a prompt that ultimately becomes a learning model for others, and then somebody else discovers that information that I didn't want to be out there for the world to have access to. So it's a cautionary tale, but you're probably going to want to keep that toggled off. And the last thing I want to highlight are these ethical considerations. Now, this is again, this is a little bit of a muddy issue. There's going to be ongoing development for some time to come. There are big concerns about this, but there are also even some small negative trends. There was a study or some information that just came out in Adweek just this past week, talking about how AI tends toward hyperbole. So if you start to see a whole lot of news releases that all talk about this being thrilling and so is thrilled and everybody's thrilled, you'll see this bias even in a pattern of this hyperbole in content generated by AI. These more concerning biases really come back to the data that the model is trained on may be a very limited data set and therefore may not represent a diverse range of human experiences and populations. So you need to know where that data set is coming from, and you need to double check it. Have other people within your organization who do reflect a range of human experiences. Review the output that comes back and use your own wisdom and guidance to understand whether or not what's coming back to you speaks clearly to a diverse audience. That's the biggest thing that you need to be concerned about. There will continue to be efforts to make sure that bias is prevented. There are efforts that were talked about at the recent health event in Vegas. Health and Human Services officials talked about efforts to develop a cross-agency plan to regulate AI in healthcare. We don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but what we can be pretty sure of is there will be guardrails and guidelines put in place to try to balance the benefits and the risks. That's what we know. And so you'll need to stay on top of all of those things. Be cautious. Use your own human intelligence to weigh out anything that comes back to you. And I think the best part is what comes now, where Jared gets to walk you through some of the prompt engineering.
Thanks, Mary. So we're going to take a look at just some prompt engineering tips. These are great for communications, and you'll see an example of communications for some of these, but they're good at just everything you want to do when interacting with a large language model. So these are some of the most important tips. So when you saw that video where we asked for an outline and then just had it write the whole blog, if you're looking for more specific and a little bit longer form content, ask it to write section by section. ChatGPT doesn't like to write long form. It will, if you say write 1,000 words, it'll write 700, 800 words and then lie to you and say that it's 1,000. So really you want to have it go section by section, taking things step by step is really helpful and helps you get better responses. Another one that you've seen used in some of the examples earlier is having ChatGPT assume a role. Act as if, even starting with act as if you're a public relations professional will give you better results than if you don't include that, because it'll take on the position of somebody who thinks like a PR person or a communicator, and it will give you better, more tailored results to whatever question follows in the realm of communications. I think one of the most important things is to use examples. If you have an example of a blog post or a news release or a pitch or a social media post, and you're like, yeah, this is a great example. I wish we had more like this. Share that with ChatGPT or any other large language model and say, this is the example that I want you to produce content that is similar to. The more examples you give it, the more context you give it, the better your results are going to be. There's certainly people who put in a quick prompt of like, write me a news release about X topic, and it doesn't really come back very well. And that's usually because they didn't include enough detail within those prompts. One thing we like to say is garbage in, garbage out. So if your prompt is not detailed and is not really providing all of the information, you're not going to get back what you're expecting to get back and hoping to get back in order to really use this efficiently. With that, making sure you give feedback and ask follow-up questions. Giving feedback and not just taking whatever the first draft that ChatGPT produces is. I usually go through 3, 4, 5 rounds of revisions because it's quicker when I say, actually remove this section and move this section to the top, and ChatGPT can do it instantly. And so working with ChatGPT to make those edits and not just saying like, oh, well, this is what it gave me, now I'll just try and edit it, you'll get results that are much closer to final product. A fun one is be polite, say please and thank you. Studies actually show that large language models perform better when there are polite prompts. So you will do yourself a favor and get better responses with a simple please and thank you. So a little fun one for you. So looking at the parts of writing a good prompt, I love this image here because it's kind of indicative of if you're not giving good instructions, you're going to get results, but they're not going to be the ones that you want them to be. And so these bullet points here can all be included together in a prompt that is very detailed. If you're doing things like writing, especially anything on the longer side, including all of this information in the prompt is going to help you get much better results than just a quick help me write a blog. So really that background information and examples, and then guidelines. What voice do you want it to use? Anything you don't want it to do? Do you want it to write in AP style? All of those things can be included within the prompt to help you get better results. And so that's a lot of information. It's kind of hard to envision how you may type that out, but large language models respond really well to using the hashtag symbol to break up like different information. So you can see an example here of audience, task, formatting, background information, and you can continue to go on with any of that other information, examples, goals, things like that, and it will give you great results compared to a very simple prompt or one that you type out in one long paragraph. ChatGPT tends to focus on things that you draw its attention to. So using the little number sign, you will draw its attention. If you were to write this without the number signs, there's the chance that ChatGPT just ignores or misses some of that. So this is just a quick, simple tip, no matter what you're doing. If you want more of a longer form prompt and you're producing longer content, using that to break it up and including as much information as possible, you're going to get much better results. Another way, if you're tackling complex issues, and this tends to be more successful in things like math, but you can ask ChatGPT to think step by step. This is proven to reduce hallucinations and therefore give you more factual information. And all it requires is saying, do this step by step, or let's take this step by step. Anything like that will help the model go through things slowly instead of just trying to jump to a conclusion. It will reason and give you its thought process so that you can take a look. It's another way to verify the thought process that this model is going through and really see where that information is coming from instead of asking a question, having an answer produced, and really not knowing where that information came from. So it minimizes those errors and is great for those logic, multi-step reasoning. Anytime I'm asking for ideation or strategy, I'm usually going and saying, ask step, or please do this step by step so that I can see how it's approaching the problem. And maybe I want it to approach it differently. And that gives me the tools in order to refine my prompt and get better results going forward. So what's next for AI? This is certainly not an exhaustive list, but we have Search GPT, I mentioned earlier, was just released last week and we're monitoring it. But like I said, the rise of AI search is going to shake up the industry for sure. We're seeing a rise in generative engine optimization, short of GEO. And this is basically SEO for AI. And we're seeing more and more importance put on how to get your content to be featured in generative AI outputs. And that is only going to increase as they venture into the search field and rival those like Bing and Google. And from preliminary findings on GEO, we're seeing that things like high profile earned media placements are actually helping brands positioning and being featured within generative engine outputs. So really important to take that into account, and something that our clients are thinking about is that making sure media relations is a portion of your communication strategy because it is impacting how you show up in those generative engine results. And as I mentioned a couple times, this is a very high-paced moving industry. Things are developing all the time, new models, better models. It will continue to advance at a rapid speed. There's rumors that OpenAI will be releasing a new model this year, and the new models usually come with performance improvements, usually across the board. So that it will write better, it will do logic better, it will do math better, those sort of things. And so we look to see what those look like, and certainly it will make our jobs easier. And as these models improve, the content that they produce will continue to be closer and closer to final product. But currently, as models stand, they are great drafts. They are not great final products. And then, of course, looking into the more distant future, what's next for AI after just these new models continue to come out? AI agents are the next step, and what those are basically autonomous AI that can perform tasks. So a good example of that would be if I asked an AI agent to create a blog outline, blog headline, and it did all at once and was like, I need you to make a blog and then social media post to promote it. And it could go through, it could draft all of that content, and it could even post it on your behalf. So that's what we're missing right now, that to make the AI we have an AI agent is it's not taking actions without human intervention. AI agents are on the horizon. I'm not going to give you a guess of a timeline because I'm not sure, but they are within the next couple of years going to be readily available to consumers, and something to be aware of. The way that we interact with AI is going to continue to change. So keeping updated on the industry is really important as it continues to change and evolve. But really, that's where we see AI going. And looking forward to seeing the industry advance. But I'm going to turn it back over to Mary quickly here before we get into a Q&A.
Yeah, and we're just gonna, thanks, Jared. We're just gonna wrap up here, but I want to say, actually, Jared, I think you did give us a little bit of a prediction there. So I don't know, let's mark it down. So he said he thinks within a couple of years, we're looking at AI agents, and I'd be willing to bet that he's right. And healthcare in particular is one of those areas where they've talked about using this so an AI agent could coordinate your care across different providers. We'll see. We have done something that we think you might enjoy and benefit from. Our email addresses are provided here. You will have access to the deck for those who want it. And we've created a fill in the blank. I should reframe. Jared has created a fill in the blank templated prompt that if you wanted to take a stab at a preliminary draft communications plan, it will allow you to do that. And we do have a couple of questions that have popped up in the Q&A section, and there's a little bit of a theme here, and I'm going to throw part of this to you, Jared, but I'll start. It looks like both Amy and Steve are asking questions related to privacy. And so one, there is this question about, if you scrape identifiable information, which Amy has said she does, and we do urge that, that's a very good point. Do you still need to toggle off the training model? Yes. We would advocate yes. You just cannot be too cautious at this point in time. I don't have the privacy settings for some of the other AI tools. We'll come back. Jared might have some of those and then can share those. But I think the other question here is related to privacy. Steve, you asked whether or not, even with that training model toggled off, how much do you think we can trust AI providers to honor that? Jared, what do you think?
I think being cautious and overly cautious is the way to go right now. We look at kind of these models as a whole; they're new, and the companies running them are relatively new, and so AI is not trained to ever regurgitate, is what they call it, information that it receives in prompts. It is not supposed to do that. There are a few recorded cases of it doing that. And so right now we would say keep super confidential information out. Change client names, regardless of privacy toggles. Really make sure that you're putting in information that you're comfortable with being out there. Again, it will not go out there when you're using these privacy settings, but we recommend playing on the cautious side and do a control F and replace every client name in your document and then use it. Things like that, just to really take off that identifying information just in the age of caution. Now, there are other models that you can use that are not just these publicly available ChatGPTs. You can have in-house models, or you can have private models, and those allow you to input any sort of data, and it's all hosted within your own servers. Those are quite expensive, but they are options, especially as you get out of communications and into health systems and healthcare providers. They will have their own systems that they control the data of. And so those will not have the same privacy concerns, but certainly have significant cost associated with them. As AI becomes more readily available and more cost efficient, we may see those private models be available to consumers. Right now, that's not on the horizon, but or be available at a more affordable price to consumers. But right now, that's not on the horizon. But eventually, we may see that. But as for now, we would recommend keeping that confidential information out, and certainly anything in regards to HIPAA out of these platforms.
Yeah, you just can't be too careful. We have time for just a couple of last things. One question, Jennifer, I can answer this one right now. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Jenny, you were asking about whether or not we anticipate legislation around AI disclosure. What we can tell you is that HHS is already moving toward the desire. They are hiring a particular position to be responsible for AI oversight. But again, things will change. We don't know exactly whether there will be. There is a counterbalance effort. Private industry is trying to take the lead on coming up with those guidelines and guardrails, because private industry would prefer to be that quote unquote regulator. So I don't know about legislation. We're all going to be keeping an eye on that one. I think there's another question here. Amy asked Jared if you can answer this one within maybe even a minute, perhaps. She said that ChatGPT is not very good with their data. It's good at summary, which we agree. She's asking if there's a prompt that can be used to hold the integrity of the data to come through more clearly.
I think, without too much background on it, I think one of the better ways to do that is to try and have a goal in mind, what you want your output to look like, and to say that up front. So I'm not sure how you've approached it, but that would be how I would start is say, I want my output to look like this. This is what I'm looking for, and then ask the question, whatever you're asking it to do. ChatGPT is not very good at like things like counting words and things like that. So if that's what you're going in, but it's certainly improving in its large scale data analysis. One other way to try it would be to upload data in whatever format you have it, maybe in a different format. So if you have it in Excel, maybe try a PDF or things like that to make sure that it's really able to engage with the data. Final thing I would say is maybe try and say, give it your prompt, and then at the end of your prompt, say, before you answer, what questions do you have? And AI will tell you what it's missing in order to get to that result. And that would be another way to approach it.
And we do have a couple other questions here, but we are really running down on time. I do appreciate Dr. Young weighed in on the chat here that you can use Olama with Olama 3 to spin up your own private instance for free. It takes about 30 minutes to set up. And I think that's in response to a question about accuracy in understanding regulatory constraints and reflecting those in communications. So it's clear that there's some interest among the group here in really understanding how things are going to change and government regulations, private industry, those kinds of things. Our best guess, let's see, Jared, do you have a final piece of wisdom on what sources might be good for people to follow to stay abreast of these things?
Yeah, Axios has a newsletter on AI. It's a daily newsletter. That's what I would highly recommend. It really produces that content um, in a very digestible and understandable way.
Thank you, everybody. We've really enjoyed this, and we hope you've walked away with a good piece of insight, something you want to try. And do feel free to reach out to us if you'd like that templated prompt for a communications plan. Thank you very much.